everybody! We are back for another, unlucky stream. And we are continuing with something that we haven't done in surprisingly well over a month. If you know what I'm talking about, and as you can tell from my left, or your right, or depending on how you're watching this video, we are continuing the Percy Jackson streams, or the book readings of Percy Jackson. For those of you who don't know, Percy Jackson is actually one of my favorite books growing up as a kid. And basically the cooler version of Harry Potter without the author being canceled, whatnot. And in honor of the upcoming Disney Plus series that's happening, which I'm utterly excited about, I thought it'd be fun to read the entire original Percy Jackson series. Oh, sorry, Mike. I just rubbed my eye. Anywho, if you're not familiar with Percy Jackson or new to this stream, I just want to let you know Percy Jackson is basically about Greek mythology, later Norse mythology, but that really depends on but you know, that's a little spoilers ahead. But trust me when I say these are really good books, and Riordan's made a lot of cool stuff, and is even in collaboration with the Disney Plus series. And they're properly going to adapt the books as best to their abilities. So, without further ado, let's get reading. I guess I should also give you a recap, too. Last time when we were with our main characters, Percy Jackson recently learned that his father was Poseidon, the god of the sea. And he was given a quest. A quest to go all the way to Los Angeles to the underworld. Because that's apparently where hell is. This was also in the movie, but you know they botched it royally. Because we already had requests. They already fought a few harpies in the bus, and they already defeated Medusa and got her head, quite literally. But now we're continuing that journey that they didn't really show in the movie. And no, the Hydra does not count. They didn't face a Hydra until the second book. Speaking of which, we are actually halfway through it as well. So give us maybe like a couple weeks, and we could be done with this with book 1. We'll continue this if book 2 does it as good. Best way to do that is let me know by following, chatting, and asking questions. So let us begin with chapter 12. Let me turn the volume a little more down. Chapter 12. We get advice from a poodle. We were pretty miserable that night. We camped out in the woods 100 yards away from the main road in a marshy clearing that local kids had obviously been using for parties. The ground was littered with flattened soda cans and fast food wrappers. We'd taken some food and blankets from Annie M's, but we didn't dare light a fire to dry our damp clothes. The Furies and Medusa had provided enough excitement for one day. We didn't want to attract anything else. We decided to sleep in shifts. I volunteered to take the first watch. Annabeth curled up on the blankets and was snoring as soon as her head hit the ground. Grover fluttered with his flying shoes to the lowest bough of a tree, put his back to the trunk, and stared at the night sky. Hey, shoo! Oh, excuse me. I don't know what came over me. Go ahead and sleep, I told him. I'll wake you if there's trouble. He nodded, but still didn't close his eyes. It makes me sad, Percy. What does? The fact that you signed up for this stupid quest? No, this makes me sad. He pointed at all the garbage on the ground. And the sky. You can't even see the stars. They polluted the skies. They polluted the sky. This is a terrible time to be a satyr. Oh yeah. I guess you'd be an environmentalist. He glared at me. Only a human wouldn't be. Your species is clogging up the world so fast. Never mind. It's useless to lecture a human. At the rate things are going, I'll never find Pan. Pam? Like the cooking spray? Pan, he cried indulgently. Pan. The great god Pan. What do you think I want a searcher's license for? A strange breeze rustled through the clearing, temporarily overpowering the stink of trash and muck. It brought the smell of berries and wildflowers and clean rainwater, things that might have once been in these woods. Suddenly I was nostalgic for something I'd never known. Tell me about the search, I said. Grover looked at me cautiously, as if he was afraid I was just making fun. The god of wild places disappeared 2,000 years ago, he told me. A sailor off the coast of Ephesus heard a mysterious voice crying out from the shore. Tell them the great god Pan has died. When humans heard the news, they believed it. They've been pillaging Pan's kingdom ever since. For the satyrs, Pan was our lord and master. He protected us in the wild places of the earth. We refuse to believe that he died. In every generation, the bravest satyrs pledge their lives to finding Pan. They search the earth, exploring all the wildest places, hoping to find where he is hidden and awake him from his sleep. And you want to be a searcher? It's my life's dream, he said. My father was a searcher, and my Uncle Ferdinand, the statue you saw back there. Oh, right. Sorry. He shook his head. Uncle Ferdinand knew the risks. So did my dad. But I'll succeed. I'll be the first searcher to return alive. Hang on. The first? Grover took his pipes out of his pockets. No searcher has ever come back. Once they set out, they disappear. They're never seen alive again. Not once in 2,000 years? No. And your dad? You have no idea what happened to him? None. But you still want to go, I said, amazed. I mean, you really think you'll be the one to find Pan? I have to believe that, Percy. Every searcher does. It's the only thing that keeps us from despair when he looks at what humans have done to the world. I have to believe Pan can still be awakened. I stared at the orange haze of the sky, tried to understand how Grover could pursue a dream that seemed so hopeless. Then again, was I any better? How are we going to get into the underworld? I asked him. I mean, what chance do we have against a god? I don't know, he admitted. Back at Medusa's, when we were searching for her office, Annabeth was telling me. Oh, I forgot. Annabeth will have a plan all figured out. Don't be so hard on her. Oh, I forgot. Annabeth will have a plan all figured out. Don't be so hard on her, Percy. She's had a tough life. She's a good person, after all. She forgave me. His voice faltered. What do you mean? I asked. Forgave you for what? Suddenly, Grover seemed very interested in playing notes on his pipes. Wait a minute, he said. Your first keeper job was 5 years ago. Annabeth has been camp 5 years. Your first assignment, that went wrong. You can't talk about it, Grover said. And his quivering lower lip suggested he'd start crying if I pressed him. But as I was saying, back at Medusa's, Annabeth and I agreed there's something strange going on with his quest. Something isn't what it seems. Well, duh. I'm getting blamed for stealing a thunderbolt that Hades took. That's not what I mean, Grover said. The Kinley ones were sort of holding back. Like Mrs. Dodds at Yancey Academy. Why did she wait so long to try to kill you? And on the bus, they weren't just as aggressive as they could have been. They seemed pretty aggressive to me. Grover shook his head. They were screeching at us. Where is it? Where? Asking about me? I said. Maybe. Annabeth and I, we both got the feeling they weren't asking about a person. They said, "Where is it?" They seemed to be asking about an object. That doesn't make sense. I know. But if we understood something about this quest, and we only had 9 days to find out the Master Bolt, and we only have 9 days to find the Master Bolt, he looked at me like he was hoping for answers, but I didn't have any. I thought about what Medusa had said. I was being used by the gods. What lay ahead of me was worse than petrification. I haven't been straight with you, I told Grover. I don't care about the Master Bolt. I agreed to go to the underworld so I can bring back my mother. Grover blew a soft note on his pipes. I know that, Percy. But are you sure that's the only reason? I'm not doing it to help my father. He doesn't care about me. I don't care about him. Grover gazed down from his tree branch. Look, Percy, I'm not as smart as Annabeth, I'm not as brave as you, but I'm pretty good at reading emotions. I'm glad your dad is alive. You feel good that he's claimed you, and a part of you wants to make him proud. That's why you mailed Medusa's head to Olympus. You want him to notice what you done. Yeah. Well, maybe satyr emotions work differently than human emotions. Because you're wrong. I don't care what he thinks. Grover pulled his feet up onto the branch. Okay, Percy. Whatever. Besides, I haven't done anything worth bragging about. I barely got out of New York, and we're stuck here with no money and no way west. Grover looked at the night sky, like he was thinking about that problem. How about I take first watch, huh? You get some sleep. I wanted to protest, but he started to play Mozart, soft and sweet, and I turned away, my eyes stinging. After a few bars of Piano Concerto No. 12, I was asleep. In my dreams, I stood in a dark cavern before a gaping pit. Gray mist creatures churned all around me, whispering rags of smoke, and that I somehow knew were the spirits of the dead. They tugged at my clothes, trying to pull me back, but I felt compelled to walk forward to the very edge of the chasm. Looking down made me dizzy. The pit yawned so wide and was so completely black, I knew it must be bottomless. Yeah, I had a feeling that something was trying to rise from the abyss. Something huge and evil.
The little hero.
An amused voice echoed far down in the darkness.
Too weak, too young. But perhaps you will do.
That voice felt ancient, cold, and heavy. It wrapped around me like sheets of lead.
They have misled you, boy,
It said.
Barter with me. I will give you what you want.
A shimmering image hovered over the void. My mother, frozen at the moment, she dissolved in a shower of gold. Her face was distorted with pain, as if the Minotaur were still squeezing her neck. Her eyes looked directly at me, pleading, "Go." I tried to cry out, but my voice wouldn't work. Cold laughter echoed from the chasm. An invisible force pulled me forward. It would drag me into the pit unless I stood firm.
Help me rise, boy.
The voice became hungrier.
Bring me the bolt. Strike a blow against the treacherous gods.
The spirits of the dead whispered around me.
No way.
The image of my mother began to fade. In the pit tightened its unseen grip around me. I realized it wasn't interested in pulling me in. It was using me to pull itself out.
Good,
It murmured.
good.
The dead whispered.
Wake.
Someone was shaking me. My eyes opened and it was daylight. Well, like I said, the zombie lives. I was trembling from the dream. I could still feel the grip of the chasm monster around my chest. How long was I asleep? How long for me? How long enough for me to cook How long for me to cook breakfast? Annabeth tossed me a bag of nacho-flavored corn chips from Auntie M's snack bar. And Grover went exploring, Look, he found a friend. My eyes had trouble focusing. Grover was sitting cross-legged on a blanket with something fuzzy on his lap. A dirty, unnaturally pink stuffed animal. No, it wasn't a stuffed animal. It was a pink poodle. The poodle yapped at me suspiciously, Grover said. No, he's not. I blinked. Are you talking to that thing? The poodle growled. This thing, Grover warned, is our ticket west. Be nice to him. You can talk to animals? Grover ignored the question. Percy, meet Gladiola. Gladiola? Percy. I stared at Annabeth, figuring she'd crack up at this practical joke they were playing on me. But she looked deadly serious. I'm not saying hello to a pink poodle, I said. Forget it. Percy, I said hello to the poodle. You say hello to the poodle. The poodle growled. I said hello to the poodle. Poodles, they're so demanding. Grover explained that he'd come across Gladiola in the woods and they'd struck up a conversation. The poodle had run away from a rich, loyal family who posted a $200 reward for his return. Gladiola didn't want to go back to his family, but he was willing if it meant helping Grover. How does Gladiola know about the reward? I asked. He read the signs, Grover said. Duh. Of course, I said. Silly me. So we turn in Gladiola. Annabeth explained in her best strategy voice. We get money, we buy tickets to Los Angeles. Simple. Thought about my dream, the whispering voices of the dead, the thing in the chasm, and my mother's face, shimmering as it dissolved into gold, all that might be waiting for me in the west. Not another bus, I said wearily. No, Annabeth agreed. She pointed downhill toward the train tracks I hadn't been able to see last night in the dark. There's an Amtrak station a half a mile away. That way. According to Gladiola, the westbound trains leave at noon. Okay, we'll be taking a short little break, ladies and gentlemen. So, I'm gonna get something to get a drink. So be right back after these messages, if we had any. Hey, we can't afford those.
go beyond my limit, not to compromise. And you can tell me if I mean it, looking in my eyes. Cause I've been waiting for my moment to strike. So come close, let me show you what it's like. Yeah, you can try to stand in my path, but you're gonna regret it. I'll be the one who laughs last while I'm making my exit. Cause this is only for the strong of heart, not if you get it. And no matter what the outcome, you better accept it. I can cut like the sail, I can bury the pain. So don't doubt for a second, just get out of my way. You're standing still, I'm not letting you go. So take this as a lesson, cause it's all that we know. Will the whole world know your name? When we dance with destiny. I've been there and I've seen it.
And we're back. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Continuing more readings. I got some water to, so my throat doesn't get super sore after all these readings. So let's continue with chapter Lucky 13. I plunge to my death. We spent 2 days on the Amtrak train, heading west through hills, over rivers, past amber waves of grain. That means there's like 7 days left. They only have a week. We were attacked once, but I didn't relax. I felt that we were traveling around in a display case, being watched from above and maybe from below. That something was waiting for the right opportunity. I tried to keep a low profile because my name and picture were splattered over the front pages of several East Coast newspapers. The Trenton Register News showed a photo taken by a tourist as I got off Grand Bus. I had a wild look in my face. My sword was a metallic blur in my hands. Might have been a baseball bat or a lacrosse stick. The picture's caption read, 12-year-old Percy Jackson wanted for questioning in the Long Island disappearance of his mother 2 weeks ago. Is shown here fleeing from the bus where he accosted several elderly female passengers. The bus exploded on the East New Jersey roadside shortly after Jackson fled the scene. Based on eyewitness accounts, police believe the boy has been traveling with 2 teenage accomplices. His stepfather, Gable Lugano, has offered a cash reward for information leading to his capture. Don't worry, Annabeth told me. Mortal police could never find us. But she didn't sound so sure. The rest of the day, I spent entirely pacing the length of the train because I had a really hard time sitting still or looking out the windows. Once I spotted a family of centaurs galloping across a wheat field, bows at the ready, and they hunted lunch. The little boy centaur, who was the size of a second grader on a pony, caught my eye and waved. I looked around the passenger car. Nobody else had noticed. The adult riders all had their faces buried in laptop computers or magazines. Another time, toward evening, I saw something huge mowing through the woods. I could have swore it was a lion, except the lions didn't live in America. And this thing was the size of a Hummer. Its fur glinted gold in the evening light, then leaped through the trees and was gone. Our reward money for returning Gladiola, the poodle, had only been enough to purchase tickets as far as Denver. We couldn't get berths in the sleeper car, so we dozed in our seats. My neck got stiff. I tried not to drool in my sleep, since Annabeth was sitting right next to me. Grover kept snoring. And bleeding and waking me up. Once he shuffled around and his fake foot fell off. Annabeth and I had to stick it back on before any of the other passengers noticed. So, Annabeth asked me, once we gotten Grover's sneaker readjusted, who wants your help? What do you mean? When you were asleep just now, you mumbled, I won't help you. Who were you dreaming about? I was reluctant to say anything. It was the second time I dreamed about the evil voice from the pit. But it bothered me so much I finally told her. Annabeth was quiet for a long time. That doesn't sound like Hades. He always appears on a black throne. And he never laughs. He offered my mother in trade. Who else could do that? I guess if he meant help me rise from the underworld, if he wants to war with the Olympians, why ask you to bring him the Master Bolt if he already has it? I shook my head, wishing I knew the answer. I thought about what Grover told me, that the Furies on the bus seemed to have been looking for something. Where is it? Where? Maybe Grover sensed my motions. He snorted in his sleep, muttered something about vegetables, and turned his head. Annabeth readjusted his... Oh, his... I think that's a typo. Readjusted her cap so it covered... Oh, no, never mind. That was just me. Annabeth readjusted his cap so it covered his horns. Percy, you can't barter with Hades. You know that, right? He's deceitful, heartless, and greedy. I don't care if his kindly ones weren't as aggressive this time. This time? You mean you've run into them before? Her hand crept up at her neck to her necklace. She fingered a glazed white bead painted with the image of a pine tree. One of her clay end-of-summer tokens. It's just... let's just say... I've got no love for the Lord of the Dead. You can't be tempted to make a deal for your mom. What would you do if it was your dad? That's easy. I'd leave him to rot. You're not serious. Annabeth's gray eyes fixed on me. She wore the same expression she'd worn in the woods at camp. The moment she drew her sword against the hellhound. My dad's resented me since the day I was born, Percy, she said. He never wanted a baby. When he got me, he asked Athena to take me back and raise me on Olympus because he was too busy with his work. She wasn't happy about that. She told him heroes had to be raised by their mortal parent. But how? I mean, I guess you weren't born in a hospital. I appeared on my father's doorstep in a golden cradle, carried down from Olympus by Zephyr, the west wind. You'd think my dad would remember if that was as a miracle, right? Like maybe he'd take some digital photos or something. But he always talked about my arrival as if there were the most inconvenient thing that had ever happened to him. When I was 5, he got married and totally forgot about Athena. He got a regular mortal wife and had 2 regular mortal kids. Tried to pretend I didn't exist. I stared out the train window. The lights of a sleeping town were drifting by. I wanted to make Annabeth feel better, but I didn't know how. My mom married a really awful guy, I told her. Grover said she did it to protect me, to hide me in the scent of a human family. At least that's what your dad was thinking. Annabeth kept worrying about her necklace. She was pinching the gold college ring that hung with the beads. It occurred to me that ring must be her father's. I wonder why she wore it if she hated him so much. He doesn't care about me, she said. His wife, my stepmom, treat me like a freak. She wouldn't let me play with her children. My dad went along with her. Whenever something dangerous happened, something with monsters, they would look at me resentfully like, how dare you put our family at risk? Finally, I took the hint. I wasn't wanted. I ran away. How old were you? Same age when I started camp. 7. But you couldn't have gone all the way to Camp Half-Blood by yourself. Not alone, no. Athena watched over me, guided me toward help. I made a couple of unexpected friends who took care of me. For a short time, anyway. I wanted to ask what happened, but Annabeth seemed lost in her sad memories. So I listened to the sound of Grover snoring and gazed out the train windows as the dark fields Ohio raced by. Toward the end of our second day on the train, June 13th, 8 days before the summer solstice, we passed through some golden hills over the Mississippi River into St. Louis. Or is it St. Louis? I guess it's up to anyone. Annabeth crashed her neck. Not crane. It's crane, not crash. Annabeth craned her neck to see the gateway arc, which looked to me like a huge shopping bag handle stuck on the city. I want to do that, she sighed. What? I asked. Build something like that. You ever see the Pantheon? Have you ever seen the Parthenon, Percy? Only in pictures. Someday, I'm going to see it in person. I'm going to build the greatest monument to the gods ever. Something that'll last 1,000 years. I laughed. You? An architect? I don't know why, but I found it funny. Just the idea of Annabeth trying to sit quietly and draw all day. Her cheeks flushed. Yes, an architect. Athena expects her children to create things, not just tear them down like a certain god of earthquakes I can mention. I watched the churning brown water of the Mississippi bellow. Sorry, that was mean. Annabeth said. Can't we work together a little? I pleaded. I mean, didn't Athena and Poseidon ever cooperate? Annabeth had to think about it. I guess the chariot? She said tentatively. My mom invented it, but Poseidon created horses out of the crests of waves. So they had to work together to make it complete. Then we can cooperate too, right? We rode into the city, Annabeth watching as the ark disappeared behind a hotel. I suppose, she said at last. We pulled into Amtrak station downtown. The intercom told us that we'd have a 3-hour layover before departing for Denver. Grover stretched. Before he was even fully awake, he said, "Food." I'm the same way. Come on, goat boy, Annabeth said. Sightseeing. Sightseeing? The Gateway Arch, she said. It's maybe my only chance to ride to the top. And you're coming. Are you coming or not? Grover and I exchanged looks. I wanted to say no, but I figured that if Annabeth was going, we couldn't very well let her go alone. Grover shrugged. As long as there's a snack bar without monsters. The arch was about a mile from the train station. Late in the day, the lines to get in weren't that long. We threaded our way through the underground museum, looking at covered wagons and other junk from the 1800s. It wasn't all that thrilling, but Annabeth kept telling us interesting facts about how the arch was built. And Grover kept passing me jelly beans, so I was okay. I kept looking around, though, at the other people in line. You smell anything? I murmured to Grover. He took his nose out of a jelly bean bar long enough to sniff. Underground, he said distastefully. Underground air always smells like monsters. Probably doesn't mean anything. But something felt wrong to me. I had a feeling we shouldn't be here. Guys, I said, you know the god's symbols of power? Annabeth had been in the middle of reading about the construction equipment used to build the arch, but she looked over. Yeah, well, hey, Grover cleared his throat. We're in public place. You mean our friend downstairs? Right. Our friend way downstairs doesn't have a hat like Annabeth's. You mean the Helm of Darkness? Annabeth said. Yeah, that's a symbol of power. I saw it next to his seat during the winter solstice council meeting. He was there? I asked. God, it's the only time he's allowed to visit Olympus, the darkest day of the year. But his helm is a lot more powerful than my invisibility hat. What if If what I've heard is true, it allows him to become darkness. Grover confirmed. He can melt into shadow or pass through walls. He can't be touched or seen or heard. And he can radiate fear so intense it can drive you insane or stop your heart. Why do you think all rational creatures fear the dark? But then, how do we know he's not here right now, watching us? I asked. Annabeth and Grover exchanged looks. We don't, Grover said. Thanks, that makes me feel a lot better, I said. Got any blue jelly beans left? I'd almost mastered my jumping nerves when I saw the tiny little elevator car we were going to ride to the top of the arch. And I knew I was in trouble. I hate confined spaces. They make me nuts. We got shoehorned into the car with this big fat lady and her dog, a chihuahua with a rhinestone collar. Ugh. I figured maybe the dog was a seeing eye dog because none of the guards said a word about it. We started going up instead of inside the arch. I'd never been in an elevator that went in a curve, and my stomach wasn't too happy about it. No parents? The fat lady asked us. She had beady eyes, pointy, coffee-stained teeth, a floppy denim hat, and a denim dress that bulged so much it looked like a blue jean blimp. There below, Annabeth told her. Scared of heights. Oh, poor darlings. The chihuahua growled. Boomer said, Now, Sonny, behave. The dog had beady eyes like its owners, intelligent and vicious. He said, Sonny, is that his name? No, the lady told me. She smiled as if that cleared everything up. At the top of the arch, the observation deck reminded me of a tin can with carpeting. Rows of tiny windows look up over the city. On one side of the river, Rows of tiny windows look over the city on one side, and the river on the other side. The view was okay, but if there's anything I like less than a confined space, it's a confined space 600 feet in the air. I was ready to go pretty quick. Annabeth kept talking about structural support and how she would have made the windows bigger and designed a see-through floor. She probably could have stayed up there for hours. But luckily for me, the park ranger announced that the observation deck will be closing in a few minutes. I steered Grover and Annabeth toward the exit, loading them into the elevator. And I was about to get in myself when I realized there were two other tourists inside. No room for me. The park ranger said, Next car, sir. We'll get out. Annabeth said, We'll wait for you. And that was going to mess everybody up and take even more time. So I said, Nah, it's okay. I'll see you guys at the bottom. Grover and Annabeth both looked nervous, but they let the elevator door slide shut. Their car disappeared down the ramp. Now the only people left on the observation deck were me, a little boy with his parents, a park ranger, and the fat lady with her chihuahua. I smiled uneasily at the fat lady. She smiled back. Her forked tongue flickered between her teeth. Wait a minute. Forked tongue? Before I could decide if I'd really seen that, her chihuahua jumped out and started yapping at me. Now, Sonny, the lady said. Does this look like a good time? We have all these nice people here. Doggy? Dougie, said the little boy. Look at Dougie. His parents pulled him back. The chihuahua bared his teeth at him, foam dripping from his black lips. Well, son, Felly sighed, if you insist. Ice started forming in my stomach. Did you just call that chihuahua your son? Chimera, dear, the fat lady corrected. Not a chihuahua. It's an easy mistake to make. She rolled up her denim sleeves, revealing that the skin of her arms were scaly and green. When she smiled, I saw that her teeth were fangs. The pupils of her eyes were sideways slit like reptiles. The Chihuahua barked louder, and with each bark, it grew. First to the size of a Doberman, then to a lion. And the bark became a roar. The little boy screamed. His parents pulled him back toward the exit, straight into the park ranger, who stood paralyzed, gaping at the monster. The chimera was now so tall, its back rubbed against the roof. It had the head of a lion with a blood-caked mane. Blood-caked. Never heard of that term, caked. Like that's definitely a dessert thing, honestly. The body and hooves of a giant goat and the serpent for a tail. The 10-foot-long diamond back growing right out of its shaggy behind. The rhinestone dog collar still hung around its neck, and the plate-sized dog tag was now easy to read. Chimera, rabid, fire-breathing, poisonous. If found, please call Tartarus. EXT 954. I realized I hadn't even uncapped my sword. My hands were numb. I was 10 feet away from the chimera's bloody maw, and I knew that as soon as I moved, the creature would lunge. The snake lady made a hissing noise that might have been a laughter. Be honored, Percy Jackson. Lord Zeus rarely allows me to test a hero with one of my brood, for I am the mother of monsters, the terrible Echidna. I stared at her. All I could say was, Isn't that a kind of anteater? She howled, her reptilian face turning brown and green with rage. I hate it when people say that. I hate Australia, naming that ridiculous animal after me. For that, Percy Jackson, my son will destroy you. The chimera charged, its lion teeth gnashing. I managed to leap aside and dodge the bite. I ended up next to the family and the park ranger, who were all screaming now, trying to pry open the emergency exit doors. I couldn't let them get hurt. I capped the sword, ran to the other side of the deck, and yelled, "Hey, Chihuahua!" The chimera turned faster than I would have thought possible. Before I could swing my sword, it opened its mouth, emitting the stench of the world's largest barbecue pit, and shot a column of flames straight at me. I dove through the explosion. The carpet burst into flames. The heat was so intense, it nearly seared off my eyebrows. Where I'd been standing a moment before was a ragged hole in the side of the arch, with melted metal streaming around the edges. Great, I thought. We just blowtorched a national monument. Riptide was now a shining bronze blade in my hands, and as the chimera turned, I slashed at its neck. That was my fatal mistake. The blade sparked harmlessly off the dog collar. I tried to regain my balance, but I was so worried about defending myself against the fiery lion's mouth, I completely forgot about the serpent tail until it whipped me around and sank its fangs into my calf. My whole leg was on fire. I tried to jab Riptide into the chimera's mouth, but the serpent tail wrapped around my ankles and pulled me off balance, and my blade flew out of my hand. Spitting out of the hole in the arch and down toward the Mississippi River, I managed to get on my feet. I knew I had lost. I was weaponless. I could feel deadly poison racing up to my chest. I remembered Chiron saying that Anaclusmos would always return to me, but there was no pen in my pocket. Maybe it had fallen too far away. Maybe it only returned when it was in pen. Maybe it was in pen form. I didn't know. I was going to live long enough to figure it out. I backed into the hole in the wall. The chimera advanced, growling, smoke curling from its lips. The snake lady Echidna cackled. They don't make heroes like they used to, eh, son? The monster growled. It seemed in a hurry to finish me off, now that I was beaten. I glanced at the park ranger and the family. The little boy was hiding behind his father's legs. I had to protect these people. I couldn't just die. I tried to think, but my whole body was on fire. My head felt dizzy. I had no sword. I was facing a massive fire-breathing monster and its mother, and I was scared. There was no place else to go, so I stepped to the edge of the hole. Far, far below, the river glittered. If I die, will the monsters go away? Will they leave the humans alone? If you are the son of Poseidon, Echidna hissed, you will not fear water. Jump, Percy Jackson. Show me that water will not harm you. Jump and retrieve your sword. Prove your bloodline. Yeah, right, I thought. I read somewhere that jumping into water from a couple of stories up was like jumping into a solid asphalt. From here, I'd splatter on impact. The Chimera's mouth glowed red, heating up for another blast. You have no faith, Echidna told me. You do not trust the gods. I cannot blame you. Little coward. Better you die now. The gods are faithless. The poison is in your heart. Which was right. I was dying. I could feel my breath slowing down. Nobody could save me. Not even the gods. I backed up and looked down at the water. I remember the warm glow of my father's smile. When I was a baby. He must have seen me. He must have visited me when I was in my cradle. I remember the swirling green trident that had appeared above my head the night of Capture the Flag, when Poseidon had claimed me to his son. That wasn't the sea. That was the Mississippi, dead center of the USA. There was no sea god here. Die, faithless one. Echidna rasped, and the Chimera sent a column of flame toward my face. Father, help me, I prayed. I turned and jumped, my clothes on fire, poison coursing through my veins. I plummeted toward the river. And that's the end of chapter 13. So let's take a little bit of a break again, because I gotta wet my whistle. I think that's what the term they use for, getting water in your system. But let me know if I'm wrong about that. But without further ado, I'll be right back. And we're back yet again. We'll be reading one more chapter, and then we'll be calling it a night. Continuing on from that cliffhanger, because I'm not leaving you on a cliffhanger that intense, is Chapter 14. I became a known fugitive. I'd love to tell you I had some deep revelation on my way down, that I came to terms with my own mortality, laughed in the face of death, etc. The truth? The only thought was, ah! The river raced toward me at the speed of a truck. Wind ripped the breath of from my lungs. Steeples of skyscrapers and bridges tumbled in and out of my vision, and then, flaboom! A whiteout of bubbles. I sank through the murk, sure that I was about to end up embedded in 100 feet of mud and lost forever. But my impact with the water hadn't hurt. I was falling slowly now, bubbles trickling up through my fingers. I settled on the river bottom soundlessly. A catfish the size of my stepfather lurched away into the gloom. Clouds of slit and disgusting garbage, beer bottles, old shoes, plastic bags swirled up all around me. At that point, I realized a few things. First, I had not been flattened into a pancake and not been barbecued. I couldn't even feel the chimera's poison boiling in my veins anymore. I was alive, which was good. Second realization, I wasn't wet. I could feel the coolness of the water. I could see where the fire on my clothes had been quenched. But when I touched my own shirt, it felt perfectly dry. I looked at the garbage floating by and snatched an old cigarette lighter. No way, I thought. I flicked the lighter. It sparked. A tiny flame appeared, right there at the bottom of the Mississippi. I grabbed a soggy hamburger wrapped out of the current and immediately the paper turned dry. I lit it with no problem. As soon as I let go, the flame spurted out. The wrapper turned back into a slimy rag. Weird. The strangest thought occurred to me only last. I was breathing. I was underwater, and I was breathing normally. I stood up, thigh deep in mud. My legs felt shaky. My hands trembled. I should have been dead. The fact that I wasn't seemed like, well, a miracle. I imagined a woman's voice, a voice that sounded a bit like my mother's. Percy, what do you say? Thanks. Underwater, I sound like I did on recordings. Like a much older kid. Thank you, Father. No response, just the dark drift of garbage downriver. The enormous catfish gliding by, the flash of sunset on the water surface far above, turning everything the color of butterscotch. Why had Poseidon saved me? The more I thought about it, the more ashamed I felt. So I got lucky a few times before. Against a thing like the Chimera, I had never stood a chance. Those poor people in the Ark were probably toast. I can protect them. I was no hero. Maybe I should stay down here with the catfish. Join the bottom feeders. Foomp, foomp, foomp. A riverboat's paddle wheel churned above me, swirling in the slit around. There, not 5 feet in front of me, was my sword. It gleaming bronze hilt sticking up in my mind. I heard that woman's voice again. Percy, take the sword. Your father believes in you. This time, I knew the voice wasn't in my head. I wasn't imagining it. Her words seemed to come out from everywhere, rippling through the water like dolphin sonar. Where are you? I called aloud. Then, through the gloom, I saw her. A woman the color of the water, a ghost in the current, floating just above the sword. She had long billowing hair, and her eyes, barely visible, were green like mine. A lump formed in my throat. I said, "Mom?" "No, child. Only a messenger. Though your mother's fate is not as hopeless as you believe. Go to the beach in Santa Monica." "What?" "It is your father's will. Before you descend into the underworld, you must go to Santa Monica. Please, Percy, I cannot stay long. The river here is too foul for my presence." But I was sure this woman was my mother, or a vision of her anyway. How do you... There was so much I wanted to ask. The words jammed up in my throat. "I cannot say, brave one. Stay, brave one," the woman said. She reached out, and I felt the current brush my face like a caress. "You must go to Santa Monica. And Percy, do not trust the gifts." Her voice faded. "Gifts?" I asked. "What gifts? Wait!" She made one more attempt to speak, but the sound was gone. Her image melted away. If it was my mother, I had lost her again. I felt like drowning myself. The only problem? I was immune to drowning. "Your father believes in you," she had said. She'd also call me brave, unless she was talking to the catfish. I waded toward Riptide and grabbed it by the hill. The Chimera might still be up there, with its snaky fat mother, waiting to finish me off. At the very least, the mortal police would be arriving, trying to figure out who had blown a hole in the arch. If they found me, they'd have some questions. I capped my sword, stuck the ballpoint pen in my pocket. "Thank you, Father," I said, again to the dark water. And I kicked up through the muck and swam for the surface. I came ashore next to a floating McDonald's. A block away, every emergency vehicle in St. Louis was surrounding the arch. Police helicopters circled overhead. The crowd of onlookers reminded me of Times Square on New Year's Eve. A little girl said, "Mama, that boy walked out of the water." "That's nice, dear," her mother said, craning her neck to the watch ambulances. "But he's dry." "That's nice, dear." The news lady was talking from her camera. Probably not a terrorist attack, we're told, but still very early in the investigation. The damage, as you can see, is very serious. We're trying to get some of the supervisors to question them about eyewitness reports of someone falling from the arch. Survivors? I felt an urge of relief. Maybe the park ranger and the family made it out safely. I hope Annabeth and Grover were okay. I tried to push through the crowd to see what was going on inside the police line. An adolescent boy, another reporter was saying. Channel 5 has learned the surveillance cameras show an adolescent boy going wild on the observation deck, somehow setting off this freak explosion. Hard to believe, John. That's what we're hearing. Again, no confirmed fatalities. I backed away, trying to keep my head down. I had to go a long way around the police perimeter. Uninformed officers and news reporters were everywhere. I'd almost lost hope of ever finding Annabeth and Grover, when a familiar voice belted, "Percy!" I turned and got tackled by Grover's bear hug, or goat hug, He said, "We thought you'd gone to Hades the hard way." Annabeth stood behind him, trying to look angry, but even she seemed relieved to see me. "We can't leave you alone for 5 minutes. What happened?" "I sort of fell." "Percy, 630 feet?" Behind us, a cop shouted, "Gangway!" The crowd paired, and a couple of paramedics hustled out, rolling a woman on a stretcher. I recognized her immediately as the mother of the little boy who had been on the observation deck. She was saying, "And then this huge dog, this huge fire-breathing chihuahua." "Okay, ma'am," the paramedic said, "just calm down. Your family is fine. The medication is starting to kick in." "I'm not crazy. This boy jumped out the hole and the monster disappeared. Then she saw me. There he is! That's the boy! I turned quickly and pulled Annabeth and Grover after me. We disappeared into the crowd. What's going on? Was she talking about the Chihuahua on the elevator? I told him the whole story of the Chihuahua, Echidna, my high dive act, and the underwater lady's message. Whoa, said Grover. We've got to get you to Santa Monica. You can't ignore a summons from your dad. Before Annabeth could respond, we passed another reporter doing a news break. I almost froze in my tracks when he said, Percy Jackson, that's right, Dan. Channel 12 has learned that the boy who had caused this explosion fits the description of a young man wanted by authorities for a serious New Jersey's bus accident 3 days ago, and the boy is believed to be traveling west. For our viewers at home, here is a photo of Percy Jackson. We ducked around the news van and slipped into an alley. First things first, I told Grover. We've got to get out of town. Somehow, we made back to Amtrak station without getting spotted. We got on board the train just before it pulled out for Denver. The train trundled west as darkness flew, police lights still pulsing against the St. Louis skyline behind us. Well, we'll be calling this one a stream because usually I like to keep these little stream adventures a little short, mostly because my voice can't handle it and I can only drink so much water to calm it down. But thank you guys so much for watching and joining on this Percy Jackson and the Olympians reading stream. If you guys want to see, tune in next week as we will talk more about this, or watch my stream Friday as I play a game known as Mole Mania. Oh, see you then, everyone. Bye-bye.